Good day, everyone. It looks like people are still joining us, but I'd like to get started. So welcome to this session on best practices of crowdfunding with Breanna DiGiammarino, who's the cause director of IndieGoGo. My name is Pamela Rusas, and I'm the director of strategic alliances here at the GSBI. And you might recall our last webinar was with John Kohler, and he was talking about impact investing and the changes that have been happening in the field with the advent of new instruments like the demand dividend, which the impact capital team at the center is piloting. And there's a lot of interest in these new forms of funding, because the traditional forms of just debt and equity that we have with like, say, startups in Silicon Valley just aren't necessarily the right vehicles for social enterprises. So there's a lot of work that's being done in that field. And then also today we're going to be looking at another source of funding, which is crowdfunding. And you can argue that crowdfunding has been around for a long time. I mean, as a kid, I could go door to door and knock on my neighbors' doors and collect money on behalf of one of my causes. But now what I would say is, with the advent of platforms like IndieGoGo and Kickstarter, it really takes crowdfunding to a whole new level and makes it very efficient and such. So that's what we'll be covering today. In 2010, Maria Springer, who was the executive director at the time of Livelihoods, came through GSBI, and I was her mentor. So after going through the program and graduating, we kept in touch. And so she asked me to be on her board and, in fact, be her board chair, which I agreed to do. And at one point in time, I'd say about 18 months ago or so, she said to me, I'm really interested in doing a crowdfunding campaign. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. So she calls me up one day, and I can remember distinctly walking from one meeting to another in DC. And she says, well, Pamela, to really be successful with a crowdfunding campaign, you need to have something that's engaging and that has some sense of urgency involved. And unbeknownst to me at the time, she was getting coaching from Bree, who's our speaker today. And so Maria continues to educate me on crowdfunding because I didn't know anything about crowdfunding. And she's like, so I want to have a theme. And she goes, Livelihoods is not about being a Band-Aid solution for poverty. And basically what we're teaching youth is life skills that will help them be successful throughout. And so I want to have this Band-Aid campaign, no Band-Aid campaign rather, and I'm going to put 25 Band-Aids on my face because I want to raise $25,000, and for every $1,000, take a Band-Aid off. And she said, and I'd really hope that you would join me in doing this. And so I said to Maria, I said, well, Maria, you know that I'm behind the campaign, and the idea about having engagement and urgency sounds very intuitive to me and logical. If you want to walk around the earth, the universe with Band-Aids on your face, then you're welcome to. But I'm not going to be walking around the world with Band-Aids on my face. But I tell you what, I said, I will put 25 Band-Aids on my face. I'll take a picture, and then I will promote those through my social media channels. And so, in fact, that's what I did. And for those of you who are not friends with me on Facebook, you would not have seen this picture. And even though I can't hear you, I know that you're laughing. And so I did promote this, and Maria actually went around for less than 25 days with Band-Aids on her face. In fact, was asked by TSA representatives if they needed to take care of her boyfriend for her. She went into places that are typically quiet, and all of a sudden there was a dull roar with all these people talking and such about what was going on. And in fact, people felt sorry for her were empathetic, we'll say, in lines, in the grocery lines in stores as she did this. But over time, she was very successful, and in fact, actually exceeded her goal of $25,000. And like I said, in peeling off these Band-Aids. So, basically, I saw this in action, and I saw the amazing coaching that Bree was doing with Maria in helping her be successful. So, I've asked Bree to join us here today to give us, basically do some coaching for us so that we can use crowdfunding as a successful option for fundraising. So, with that, I'm going to turn the the controls over to Bree, and she will take it from there. Bree?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. No better introduction than hearing an actual use case from the world, and especially Maria's, because what a great campaign. It was fun to work with her, and I'm so proud. And she did a great job. Excuse me, I have a little cough today. But she did a great job not only on her campaign, but following up and being really clear about the impact that she provided. I remember I was a contributor. I got a box of Band-Aids from Maria during the campaign, and then afterwards I got an email showing the new location she had built with the $25,000 and that they were already off and running, and it was just such a treat to have been a part of that.
Bree,
But mhm.
if you're showing your screen, can you show your screen, please? Remember
Oh
that.
yeah, I thought it was. Let's see. Show my screen. It looks like it is. It says showing screen. What are you seeing?
I'm actually seeing my screen right now.
Okay. Can maybe folks type it in if you're seeing my screen just to see if it's a
Oh,
problem
there,
for
now
everyone?
it's coming up.
Okay, maybe it's just being a little slow.
There you go. I can see it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Perfect. Good. Well, because you can't see me and you can only see the screen, I decided to put in a little picture. So this is what I look like. Not always wearing such silly glasses and expressions. But this is me, and it's great to be here. I got to first know folks at the GSBI through my work at the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation, where I was working with startup entrepreneurs, nonprofits looking to change the world. So it's been fun to move from that role now to IndieGoGo, where I'm working with entrepreneurs in moving forward their work in a slightly different way, but similarly looking to get momentum and change the world. So I can imagine a greater group to be with. IndieGoGo was founded back in 2008, and the idea is to empower anyone to achieve their dreams. So the founders were finding that, yes, there were ways to get momentum from the crowd, but they hadn't really caught up with the new technologies, and that because our world was so integrated via social networks and our economic networks in a way that had been totally unprecedented, they wanted to be able to get that momentum from their crowd. So they launched IndieGoGo back in '08 to do just that. And we've really held very dear to our heart being the no gatekeepers approach to crowdfunding. So anyone, anywhere in the world at any time can launch a campaign for anything. And that has made us very, very broad. So we have campaigns across all different topic areas and many, many geographies. We have campaigns and campaign owners in somewhere around 190 countries and territories. And we've really remained this no gatekeepers approach. What does tend to differentiate Indiegogo in the world is that and being most open and largest crowdfunding platform, but also our dedication to being supportive. So we do have a lot of resources, and we do have a 24/7 support at indiegogo.com helpline, and folks like me who are topic area experts. So lots of good stuff there, and I'll share with you a slide with some extra resources you can delve into after this. I don't know why this keeps showing me that. Okay, so these are just a few of our partners in entrepreneurship, probably some folks who you know, Kiva, and I'll show you how we work with them. Lots of Agora you might be familiar with. So we've really had a lot of momentum in the social innovation space. I'm very happy to have been a part of that. To orient you to a campaign, this is an example called Kite Patch, and the Kite Patch was a campaign that actually makes people invisible to mosquitoes, and they wanted to grow because they needed to do their next round of testing in Uganda, where they were using the patch in order to help prevent the spread of malaria. So they ran a campaign on IndieGoGo, and this is what a campaign looks like. You have your central video or picture on the center of left side. Then on the right, you have your goal amount and the green bar representing how much of the goal you have reached, as well as the funding model you have chosen. So this campaign chose the fixed funding model, which means that they would not receive the dollars that they raised until they hit their goal. But that's actually the less common model for us at IndieGoGo. We find most folks choose the flexible funding model, where you can receive the funds even if you don't hit your goal, because most of our campaigns are going to move forward their work anyway. Beneath that, you see it says select a perk, and these are the places where you can have items that you'll give in exchange for contributions. And though you can be very creative with that, we'll talk those are. They don't have to be products. They can be concepts. They can be experiences, etc. So those are perks. They're just the tokens of thanks you get in exchange. And then at the top, you see some stats. So things like the number of comments they've received, the number of funders. So this campaign was quite successful. They were actually offering the patch in a buy one, give one model. So every time that you purchased some mosquito invisibility patches for yourself, they would give them for the trials in Uganda. So they had over 11,000 people end up funding that. It will soon be in stores, actually, so be on the lookout. So that's a campaign, and then this page showcases a partner page, which is where you can aggregate campaigns in one place. And it's just a nice way to really group campaigns. So if, for example, you're working with a lot of participants, so we have an Agora partnerships partner page so that they can aggregate the entrepreneurs they work with and have their campaigns in one place. And it just gives you some overall info about Agora, or in this case, Startup America at the top, and shows you how many campaigns have participated and how much they have raised. So that's a little bit on IndieGoGo. Now I want to jump in to why it's useful to use crowdfunding, because certainly the funding side is a very valuable piece, and it's the one that is probably the most well known given that it is in the name. But there are a lot of other reasons to use crowdfunding that can be extremely valuable and really game changing. So a few of those are listed here. They tend to fall in the area of market validation. So if you're thinking about, especially as a startup, understanding who cares about what you're doing and why do they care and how much do they care, and are they actually willing to put dollars behind that caring? This is a great way to test that early market and identify the answers to those questions, and also even figure out how to message your work so that you get those audiences engaged. So you can change your campaign over time to change the content, change your messaging, change your approach, and you'll be able to figure out which pieces of your message resonate with your audiences. You'll also be able to capture that data about those audiences and engage those folks who have participated to become longer-term participants and longer-term advocates for your work. I'd also highlight this evangelism piece, because more and more I'm seeing crowdfunding being used as a platform for spreading a message. So if you have a particular piece of awareness you want to get out to the world, running a campaign can be a very effective way to actually disseminate a message. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go through. So here are some campaigns that used crowdfunding to gauge demand for their product, improve demand for their product before they got a larger funding down the line or larger dissemination systems. So Luminate is an inflatable solar light, and they did similarly a buy one, give one model. So you could claim this inflatable solar light for yourself and also contribute one to their work abroad. So they ended up raising 5 times their goal of $10,000 and had over 1,000 funders who supported them in this effort. And they've now gone on to be quite successful continuing their work and had quite a lot of uh, press even actually around this campaign. So they were able to use it to spread their message and get the word out so that people knew about them after they had their campaign. So it was quite useful for proving that demand. I'd like to highlight this mini one because this is a software campaign where they had this program that would collapse your keyboard from 3 lines down into 1, and you could then have more space on your tablet. And these were just some folks out of the University of Toronto. They were still students. They didn't know if this idea was really going to go very far, but they decided to give it a whirl. And similarly, they launched a campaign for $10,000, but ended up finding that the campaign was really getting momentum, and they had over 8,000 people claim the perk to be the first to try the keyboard. So for $5, you could get early access to this new keyboard. And they really got a lot of not only momentum to finish up the work and get the project out, but also to get feedback from that first group of people, so that then after they had their early launch of the product, they were able to iterate on it and improve upon it so that their second launch of the software was all the more strong. And they're now already in conversations with phone companies to integrate the software directly into phones at the point of sale. So it's quite a nice way for them to get momentum. So I like to highlight the growing your market examples that we've seen, and I'm very glad we've already talked about Maria Springer and Livelihoods, and she was using that $25,000 that she was raising in order to expand to a second location in Kenya. So that's how she used urgency to help get momentum for her expansion. Now, the upper left campaign here, the Hello Hardo campaign, is another example of growing your market. And what they did, they're a YouTube show. It's literally called My Drunk Kitchen, where Hannah Hart drinks and cooks and has a lot of fun. And they wanted to take this YouTube show on the road. So they launched this campaign because they didn't know where they were going to take the show to. So every time somebody contributed to this campaign to fund the tour, she would actually use the location from where they contributed as a vote for their geography. So she ended up mapping out her tour route based on where people had contributed from. So it was a really fun way to have some urgency into her campaign and participation from her audience. These campaigns are using IndieGoGo to spread a message. I would particularly highlight here this bottom right example about the full page ad for Turkish democracy. So when we were having unrest in Turkey a few months ago, there were some folks of Turkish descent in the U.S. who were realizing that the media coverage was not fully showing the situation that was going on there. So they put up a campaign to raise $50,000, 53, to create and post an ad in the New York Times being more clear about what was really going on in Turkey. And this campaign was one of our fastest to raise $50,000 and was effective not just in getting the funds, but spreading this idea that there's something going on in Turkey that hasn't been fully exposed in the media. So that helped them get a lot of their goals achieved as well. They ended up raising more than twice their goal, and what they did was they sent to everybody who was a funder here, so the 2,600 people, they sent different versions of the ad they were thinking to post and asked them to vote on which ones they wanted to run in the Times. So they actually crowdsourced the decision of which ad to run, and then they posted the ad in the Times, and this all happened in a matter of 5 days. So it was really quite an exciting momentum. And then these guys have actually just launched another campaign that similarly had an ad in the New York Times for another issue, and that was also successful. So it's been a really great model for them. So here's the Kiva partner page, where you can see that folks at Kiva are using IndieGoGo to empower their fellows to raise funds to cover the cost of their time on their fellowship. So Kiva can't pay their fellows, but they give them access to this great partner page where they can raise funds to cover the time for their work abroad in terms of travel and expenses, etc. So we've had more than 47 campaigns at this point who have participated in this way, and they've done a really great job. So they actually share this product with their incoming cohort of fellows every time they have a new cohort and give them advice about how to run a good campaign. So those are some examples of campaigns, and I'll refer to some more as we go through, but I want to jump now into the fundamentals of a great campaign, because we have found that there is for sure a difference between a campaign that you throw together last minute and one that you are very thoughtful about. So the first key piece of a great campaign is how you frame it. And you've probably heard me refer over the course of this conversation to people who are raising funds for very specific projects. Now, that is a very smart move, because we find that campaigns that are more specific are resonating better with the crowd. They're able to get their mind around what you're doing, and they can get engaged more easily because there's more specifics for them to get connected about. So being clear about what you're raising funds for is very valuable. And the more tangible, specific you can be about that, the better. So the fact that Maria was raising funds to cover the cost of the launch of her second location, that was very tangible for me. I was very excited to support her in that very specific project. If she had said she was raising funds to continue her work, I might not have been as excited because I didn't understand how my funds were going to directly impact what she was doing. But in this case, I understood, oh, I would help her reach a new geography. I'd help her reach a new set of kids who she's working with. So the full understanding was better. And this also goes along with how much money you ask to raise, because we actually find that you do not necessarily raise more money if you set a higher goal. And this page can show that. We call this the green bar effect, because even though these two campaigns have both raised $20,000, which is quite a sum of money, neither of them, they look very different, and the one on the right looks like it's much more successful than the one on the left. So because this one on the right has set a goal that's 3 times lower than the one on the left, it has this look of momentum. It looks like it's getting towards its goal. It looks like it's going to be successful, and we find that this perception effect is very much at play in every single campaign. So always we recommend setting your goal really as low as possible to make your work worthwhile, and then to always feel free to try to raise more than your goal. So you can have what we call stretch goals. And stretch goals will be very specific ways that you will use additional funds you raise, but they will not be reflected in the amount you raise as your initial goal. So if the campaign raises 50K and they say, thank you for that, if I raise an additional 20K, I'll be able to do XYZ. So they'll ultimately raise more than their goal, but setting their goal at the beginning as low as possible has been very valuable for them. Happy to talk through that more on a case-by-case basis. So the frame is a really important piece. It's the scope of what you're doing. It's how much you're looking to raise. It's why you're doing the campaign. What are your goals beyond financial? So really being purposeful is an important first step. The second key piece to a great campaign is your pitch. So your pitch we refer to is the video or picture that you post and your text about your campaign. So for your video or picture, we highly recommend having a video, because campaigns with videos raise over 300% more than those without. So that's an important starting place. And the videos don't have to be super fancy. They don't have to be very professionally done. That isn't the key differentiator between a successful campaign and a non-successful one. What is the key differentiator is that it has to be personal. So showcase yourself, showcase your story. Why are you doing this campaign? Why are you putting your time and effort behind it? Why is a crowdfunding campaign the right direction for you? Is it helping you to close a gap in the existing financial markets that you haven't been able to raise funds in before? Is it helping you to get to a new level of sustainability? What is it? And really showcasing your personal story is the most important thing. This is often surprising for some folks because they're used to showcasing their work, and your work is important, but we find people connect to people before they connect to projects on crowdfunding. So that's very important. And even the most professionally done campaigns like the Scan and Do Scout, which was a product and raised over $1.6 million, they have a great video where they showcase first and foremost their founder Walter and why he even created this product that measures your personal health and tells you statistics. And he shares at the beginning of his video that he was in the hospital with his son for 2 years and he didn't understand his health indicators, but he really wanted to. So he developed the Scanadu to help understand his son's health in a more digestible way. And that's something we can all relate to. If we knew someone who was in the hospital, we would love to understand what was going on in their health more clearly. So that personal story helps the whole world connect with him. And it's only after he shares that that he then goes into the specifics of his product and the value that it provides. This is a video I do recommend watching afterwards if you have a moment. Just Google IndieGoGo Scanadu. So we've talked about your frame. We've now talked about your pitch. Just to close out on pitch, in addition to your video, we do recommend that you have your content in your pitch text reflect the similar story. So you still want to show your personal story in your pitch text. You still want to have the specifics of what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you're using crowdfunding. Be clear with how much you're looking to raise and where those dollars will go, focusing on the outcomes. So rather than focusing on the amount of number of people you need to hire, focus instead, you can be clear about that, but focus instead on how many additional people it will enable you to serve or reach, or how many dollars you'll be able to empower people to earn, or whatever your impact metric is. Be clear about the outcome. And in your pitch text, you are encouraged to use infographics to show some of this information. So break down your budget into the key places where you will spend the dollars, break it down into the impact you will have in some sort of infographic, because people really resonate with that and it helps to break up the text portion. Keep it relatively concise and have what we like to say, keep above the scroll, sort of like they used to say above the fold for newspapers. Now we say above the scroll, keep your highest level information about what you do, why you're doing a campaign, and where the dollars will go right at the top of your campaign, in case people come to it and don't scroll down, they don't read anything else, they get the highest level info right away. So that's some info about your pitch. Now the third key piece is your perks, and these are those tokens of thanks that you can give in exchange for contribution. And we find that people contribute to campaigns for these three reasons, plus one other, which is the person. So they will contribute because they know you, they care about you, they want to help you move forward your work. So having perks that align to all of these reasons is important. So there's the personal, then there's the passion or purpose side. So they care about what you're doing. They want to help you move it forward, or they want to participate in it. People like to be part of something bigger than themselves. So if they see your campaign as an opportunity to do that, that's a key reason people will participate. There's often a lot of pieces of affiliation that people will recognize and support through campaigns, like they will support somebody who's part of the same cohort as them, like you guys supporting a GSBI campaign, or they will support a campaign from a country that they have visited or that they care about or that their family is from. So those are all pieces of participation. And then the final reason people contribute are for the perks, or the actual items or opportunities. And here you can be very creative. It can be things like actual product if you happen to have one, like an inflatable solar light, or it could be something that is more experience in nature, like having a webinar by the foremost thinker in solar lights that you offer to people to join if they contribute. And I'll show you some examples of very creative perks in a moment. So we do find that having perks is quite helpful. So even if you don't have a product and you're thinking that it might be challenging for you to offer perks, really think again, and what you can do is have perks that directly speak to the impact of what you're doing, if nothing else. So you can say for $200, you can help us cover the cost to engage a student in our work for a week. Or for $1,000, you're helping us to provide marketing materials to advocate for our work for an extra week, or whatever it is. Think about your impact and provide perk levels that represent it. That's probably the simplest way to do it. We do find that the $25 perk is the one that is claimed the most, but that on average, contributions are in the $70 to $80 range, and that the perk level that tends to get you the most revenue is the $100 perk. So those are just a few stats, but you need to know your audience and think through what the potential is with them, particularly keeping in mind that you do need to actually fulfill these perks after the campaign. So I was amazed that Maria sent me the box of Band-Aids very quickly. It might have even been while the campaign was still live. But you want to be very careful with your time. We had one campaign owner early on who promised to make a personal video for everyone who contributed at a certain level, and ended up having thousands of people contribute at that level. So I think that campaign owner is still making personalized videos that they're sending out to those campaign contributors, but you are able to set a maximum number of perks at any level available, so there is certainly a way to limit that risk. And there are a lot of creative things you can do to create that urgency. For example, have a limited number of perks available, have early bird pricing where a perk is lower earlier, the perk price is lower earlier in your campaign, have premium versions where there are bundled packages of special opportunities together. These things you can test during the course of your campaign as you can take perks up and down. Here are some examples. I love this girl-powered wallpaper pack. This was a campaign that was launching an app camp for girls to teach girls how to code, and this perk at the $10 level, you could get the wallpaper that the girls would code during their camp for your own phone. So over 100 people claimed that. It helped to move forward their work. It helped people to participate in it. It was very well theme aligned. Below that, you see that software keyboard campaign I mentioned, where over 8,000 people wanted to be the first to try it. And then next to that, the thank you banner, traditional philanthropy models can translate very well to crowdfunding. This one is just simply having your name on a banner for $1. We actually would probably say if somebody can contribute $1, they can contribute 5. So I would at least have your lowest amount at 5, but you can set it at 1 if you want. And I've also seen really great success with things like having a wall of thanks. So at $50, for example, your name will go on our Wall of Thanks, which is a website that has all of the contributors listed. At $100, your name will go on the Wall of Thanks in bigger font. Things like that can work really well. Below that is the tour. So this is one that's an experience. If you contributed to this campaign, you could get a tour of the telescope they were renovating. Next to that, the Citizen Doctors one is from the Scanadu campaign. It's similarly the chance to join the scientists at a conference about this new world of health and healthcare. So that one was a very powerful experience. And then above that is a perk for a Pashmina scarf from Nepal, and this was a campaign building schools in Nepal. I find that people do like this idea of traveling vicariously through your campaign. So whether it's that you provide them with an artisan product from the location in which you're working, or it's a postcard from the location where you are, this kind of connection geographically around the world can be very powerful. So these are just some ideas. They're very fun to think through perks. And again, I'm happy to talk offline about any of those. And then the final area, though definitely not least in terms of importance, is your promotion strategy. And the thing about a campaign is that it's really not winning the lottery. It's not throwing your campaign up and the crowd coming and supporting it right away. It really takes a lot of work and preparation. So the campaigns that do crowdfunding the best are really run by people who are giving a lot of effort and time, and they do a lot of planning. And there's really three key phases of that planning. So ahead of time, you want to make sure that you are being thoughtful about how you will go live with your campaign, who's going to care about your campaign, think through those key audiences, push yourself to think through more audiences than might come to mind right away. It's probably easy for you to think about a couple audiences of people who will care, but think even further than that and say, who else will care? Because your campaign is a unique opportunity to really test those markets. And then, really, during the course of your preparation, get together a team of people. So, literally, invite people to be on your team who will show up at the bottom of your campaign with their social media presence. And you really want that for a couple reasons. One is that having people who you know on your campaign team will show the world that you have supporters. So, we sometimes hear it said at IndieGoGo, if your mom wouldn't give you $5, why should a stranger in the crowd? And this idea is very strong. Goes back to that 30% rule where you want to raise 30% of your campaign goal from your closest community in the first 24 to 48 hours after going live in order to show the world that your green bar is moving up and that they should come in and be part of it. So having those people on your campaign team shows the world that you have support, you have credibility, and it also can be valuable because those people will become your biggest advocates. And you want to have those people across a variety of social and geographic and skill networks. So I like to think about having credibility in each of the key audiences that I'm trying to get mobilized in my campaign. So if I'm trying to reach a veterans organization, for example, and I'm doing work in the veterans space, then having somebody who is an authority in that space join my campaign team is really valuable. Now, they don't need to be very famous necessarily. It's great if they are known in their specific community, but the key is that they have a strong social network and they care about what you're doing. So having between 5 and 10 people at least on your campaign team is really valuable. The other thing to do ahead of time is really do plan your launch. So we find that a lot of our campaigns go live with what we call a soft launch, and that means that they go live with their campaign, but they only tell their closest community. So perhaps they have an in-person event where they invite people to come and they'll share their campaign video, they'll talk about the campaign, they'll literally ask people to contribute right then and there on the spot, and that is a very nice way to launch your campaign and get that early 30%. So the soft launch is a really effective tool, and then they'll go hard launch live a couple days later when they already have some of that momentum so that the crowd can get and understand their campaign after it's already had some proof of support. So the soft launch and in-person event are some very valuable models. And then once you're live, you definitely want to stay proactive. There's the opportunity to send updates through the campaign, which will enable your contributors and followers to understand what you're up to, the progress you're getting. And the people who have already contributed are very likely to share your updates with their network. So asking them to post updates in their Twitter or Facebook feeds, asking them to share links to your work with their friends and family is really a valuable way to get momentum. So we do find that you should treat your campaign almost like a blog. blog and share updates quite frequently, even more than you would instinctively do in a normal way, because these folks who are participating here know that your campaign is only going to be live for a certain amount of time. At IndieGoGo, our campaigns have a maximum length of 60 days. So they know that they're not going to be getting your mail in this way forever, and they're really part of something that's a short, exciting experience. So keep the blog, keep the momentum, and that all helps to contribute to what we call your go-go factor. So your go-go factor is a measure of social engagement. It's taking into account how much the world is engaging in your campaign, sharing it with others, spreading it in their social media networks, and also how much you are engaging in your campaign, sending updates to your audiences, things like that. And the higher your go-go factor, the higher that we can promote you on whatever landing page you've selected, be it health or community or environment, etc., but also on our homepage, in our newsletter, and in our social media feeds. So our go-go factor is how we decide which campaigns to promote. So I leave you with this final example of a fantastic campaign. And again, I would recommend that you go watch the video after this webinar. Simon Griffiths is an entrepreneur from Australia who has a campaign that he ran to support his work at his company, Who Gives a Crap. The idea of Who Gives a Crap is that they give a portion of profits to sanitation initiatives around the world, and they want to make the world more aware that sanitation is a really critical issue, in addition to actually providing funds to support it. So Simon created this campaign with his team, and he used another very exciting urgency model. So he actually sat on a toilet with his pants around his legs and live streamed himself sitting there for the duration of his campaign until he raised $50,000. So he live streamed himself sitting there for something like 30 hours is about how long it took for him to raise those $50,000. But it did work. He did raise them, and he was able to move forward. And not only that, but he actually got really interesting data about who was supporting him. He found that though people around the world were excited about his campaign, a lot of people in the States looked at it and shared it. It was the people in Australia who actually converted to become contributors more often. So that helped him decide to focus his efforts in Australia for his near-term next steps. So good campaign. I also recommend checking out his video. He pulled everything together in his campaign well. And then these are just a few of our resources that I recommend. The number one place I'd suggest looking is our field guide. So if you Google IndieGoGo field guide, that's a really great 20-page document with a lot of the content that I've shared with you today. We also have come out with our new playbook, which is a more interactive online version of the field guide. So if you Google IndieGoGo playbook, that was a good one too. And we actually have a cause handbook, so a piece that's dedicated explicitly to raising funds for causes. So I'd look up the cause handbook as well. But overall, those are the key pieces of a great campaign, and I would love to talk with each of you. I know you're doing amazing work and have a great variety of work going on in the portfolio, so please feel free to be in touch directly, and we would love to help you create a great campaign. But I'm also happy to stick around now if we can take questions. I'm not sure if there's a way for you to type them in, and I'm happy to do that. So thanks for having me.
Wow, Bree, thank you so much. I don't know if all of you just know that the session's been recorded, because if you're like me, you're furiously writing down notes, and I'm sure I missed some pearls of wisdom there. So like I said, we do have this recorded, and it will be available on GSBI Connect. And for those of you who are alumni that haven't signed up for GSBI Connect, please do so. So there is a questions box, and please type in your questions. We have a little bit of time here for questions. So as you're doing that, Bree, there's a couple things that I saw already starting to come in. One is, there's a fear a fear of failure, And when you're doing a campaign, you're kind of putting yourself out there in a way that um, is pretty public. And do you have any thoughts about just how to kind of get over that and start to do the work that's needed? I'm sure you kind of run
Yeah,
into that.
it is a scary thing, but what we recommend is starting small. So you're welcome to do a campaign that's the lowest goal amount that we have you able to set is $500. So you're welcome to do a super small campaign, and we find that that's a really great way to start to understand how these mechanisms work. So what are the dynamics of the social network? Where do you get that early momentum from? And then once you learn that, you can run another campaign in the future. So, for example, the Black Girls Code nonprofit, which is located in Oakland, ran a campaign 2 years ago to support their work in 7 cities across the country, teaching girls to code. And they raised $22,000 doing that. So it was a pretty great start. It was not the smallest of campaigns, but at any rate, in the next year, after they had learned so much about their model and how to run a good campaign, they ran a second campaign just last year, and that one raised over $110,000 to support their work in 10 cities. So they used it as a learning experience. So I would just start with something very tangible, very discreet, and learn the waters that way.
Great. Another thing that you said, and I certainly experienced it with Maria's campaign, is that there is some time and energy that you need to put into planning a campaign, making sure that, as you said, you're following up, that there's a continuing engagement with during the campaign, and then you deliver what you committed to in terms of the perks and such like that. And so you started to touch on this, and I saw some of this, but some thoughts about getting teams of people around you and kinds of people that could be useful, or skill sets, so that because, as you know, all of our social entrepreneurs are very, very, very busy already. But so who is it that they can lean on in their network that would be good skills to bring in, so that they're not the only ones having to do this work?
I definitely do recommend creating a team earlier rather than later to help you with the campaign. And that can be inclusive of the people who will ultimately be the ones on your team to share it, but it might be an even smaller group than that. So, for example, I ran a campaign to support the University of Virginia, my alma mater, last year, and we had a team of about 10 people who brought a variety of skills to the table. So we had a gal who was in marketing. She was really good at crafting our message and figuring out how to share that. So she was a huge value ahead of the campaign, but even more so while the campaign was running, because she could help us to craft the message and figure out how to change our message based on what we were seeing. So she was fantastic. Then we had a person who was she actually didn't she wasn't a videographer, but her boyfriend was, so she got her boyfriend to help us make the video. So finding somebody who can be helpful with a connection to somebody in the video world, that can be a really nice support to have. We had one guy who was our treasurer. He was our point person for thinking through how much we had to raise, and we were doing an actual event, so we had to be very careful to consider the cost of the event versus how much we were bringing in. So he was really helpful on that front. So those were a few of the different roles that we had on the team, and that was really, really helpful. So similarly, thinking through that. And then the last section that you would really want to have people is representing the audiences you're reaching. So in our case, we were looking to reach University of Virginia alums, so we looked to have people on the team who were from different graduating class years, different functions of the university, whether it was engineering or the college, etc. So that's a really good way to think about your team, is getting those types of skills and diversity of social networks together. And it is a very intensive thing to run a campaign. I like to tell people that I have found campaigns be helpful for people at all different stages of their startups and all different stages of their their growth, but that it needs to be a time when you really think it's worth it, because it's going to take your effort to make it work. Even if you bring on somebody who will run the campaign for you, you're probably going to have to stay quite engaged because ultimately, there's a personal story that needs to come through, and it can be a beneficiary's personal story. It doesn't have to necessarily be you as the founder, but often in the early stages of companies launching, it is the founder whose story is very valuable to come through.
Great. Thanks, Bree. And there's a question about whether have you seen unique approaches for funding technology products or inventions?
Yeah, so especially with inventions, and it depends on whether or not it's a consumer product. So if it's something that you're able to offer to the people who contribute, but certainly if you are, then there's a lot of learning you can do in your campaign. So for example, the Misfit Shine is a gadget that helps you to measure how much movement you're making in a day and whether or not what kind of calories you've burned, things like that. And it's very sleek. The founders were former Apple designers, and they were launching their campaign in order to figure out, did people want this little Misfit Shine product? So they launched the campaign, and they found, yes, people want it. They got a lot of momentum for it right away, but then they also were getting comments from people saying, hey, how can I wear this as aside from a clip? I don't want to just clip it onto my clothes. Isn't there some other way I can wear it? So they sent out a survey to everyone who contributed and learned that people really wanted a necklace and really wanted a bracelet. So that they actually launched a necklace and bracelet through their campaign, which had never been part of their initial plan, but it's now a very high margin piece of their business that was very easy for them to provide and was what the crowd had asked for. So they got feedback right away from their contributors that they wanted this extra accessory. So that was an example of using the crowd to inform the development of your product, and that's a really strong thing to do.